I just want to clarify, the teacher was the victim, correct?
Yes.
Because I know we're talking about, like, switching career paths. That's a big difference.
Yes.
Going from teaching kids to breaking them out.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Life on Shuffle podcast, a collection of stories about people who have taken chances, embraced the unexpected, and inadvertently discovered their true passion. Today we are featuring Diedre Parker, a real estate agent and a part-time crime catcher from Burke County, North Carolina. I'm your host, Lily. In addition to our guests, we also have Brianna, Elizabeth, Cheyenne, and Mr. Cooper. Diedre is a mother and a grandmother, community leader, part-time law enforcement officer, real estate agent, and an all-around crafty gal. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lily.
So why don't you go ahead and tell us about your story?
Okay. My name is Diedre Parker. I am a native of Burke County. I'm 55 years old, so I've been around for a while. I have two kids who are grown, and I have, I guess, about 6 grandkids. Was married for about 29 years. I got married when I was in high school, and my first husband, late husband, passed away after 29 years of marriage, so I'm remarried. So that's why it's kind of hard to count on my grandkids, because it's my grandkids and his grandkids together. But anyhow, I grew up in Burke County, graduated East Burke High School. Didn't really know what I wanted to be when I grew up, like everybody else. But I started a family early and had 2 kids. And during that time, I kind of navigated toward like childcare since my kids were little. So I kind of got an was an elementary assistant for a while. I drove a school bus for about 10 years. I went from there once the kids got older, had always had an interest in real estate. And I had an interest in real estate even when I was in high school, but I never could get down that road. So I actually took a class and failed when I was in high school. I was dual enrolled in my high school, East Burke High School, and at Catawba Valley Community College. But when I took that class, it kind of put a damper on it because I failed the class. But it was a really, really tough class. But later on, after the kids got older, I think I was about 30 years old, and I decided I was going to try real estate again. So I had heard from some other folks who were like real estate schools. Instead of taking at the community college, you can go to a real estate school, and your chances for success in the real estate industry is a lot better. So you have like a 67% chance of passing if you went through the real estate school. So I ended up going to J. My Monk in Charlotte, and there's several real estate schools that are still going, and that one's one of them. So that was kind of my passion, was to get into real estate, and I'm still a real estate agent today. Of course, there was a downturn in the real estate market in 2008. I did have my own company. I was in Granite Falls. I actually right close to this building. I had my own company. But in 2008, we had the recession, and I wasn't selling anything, and a lot of other folks weren't selling anything. So I was like, what am I going to do now? So a friend of mine who sold real estate was a deputy. He went to BLET, basic law enforcement training, and he said, you should try going over to the jail and working at the jail, because there's one in Catawba County, and they just built it, and I know that they need help. So I ended up going to work in a jail at the detention center for 3 years. I was a detention officer, certified detention officer there for 3 years. But then I started talking to some of the police officers, like, it wouldn't be too bad to get into to police work. So I went to basic law enforcement training when I was 44 years old, and was told by a lot of folks, you are not going to be able to pass that. There are young women out here who try to do these push-ups and do sit-ups, and they're a lot younger than you, and there's no way you're going to be able to do that. But I went, and I passed. I did the POPAT. It was very, very tough. It was challenging. I also have exercise-induced asthma, which made it even harder for someone of my age, plus having that on top of it to get through the physical part. But at the end, you take a physical abilities test. It's called the POPAT, and you have to drag bodies and run and do like 50 push-ups and 50 sit-ups. But I was still able to get through it. Um, I had to clear that time in 7 minutes and 30 seconds, and I did it in 7 minutes and 15 seconds. So I was really close, but that was really challenging. There was a lot of, firearms training. You had to be sprayed, you had to be tased. There was a lot of things, but I really wanted to get through it. I got through it. I went to work for Burke County as a as a patrol officer. I worked in the court as a bailiff. Then I transferred after my husband passed away. I transferred to Catawba County, and I was a detective there. Worked with the SVU, which was small children's cases. I was a detective for 2 years. I'm still reserve at Burke County now, but I'm having some health issues, so I'm not full time anymore like I used to be. But I do still sell real estate, and probably will die with my real estate license because I love that so much too.
You mentioned the doubt that was put on you from outsiders before entering the police academy. Did that continue after you passed? Were you still put that doubt when you went into the field, or was that sort of subsided as you went in?
I think, well, a lot of the folks that said, you're not going to be able to make it. I guess they were basing that on what they had seen from other people who, I mean, I was always really pretty physical fit. Even as a young person, I was, played basketball and I was always pretty fit. So I think the people looking at me were just basing it off what they had seen other people fail. And the doubt, the doubt for me, I never doubted. I had my mind set on it. So it was my goal. But the outside pressure from those comments, along with even the sheriff, like the sheriff, I was a detention officer at Catawba County, and I wanted to work for them, but it was well, I don't want to mean this in a bad way, but and it still is a male dominated organization. So when I went to talk to the captain, where I had worked for 3 years, and said, "Hey, this is what I'm going to do. I'm getting ready to graduate next week." He said, you would probably be better off maybe like at a police like a police organization, not a sheriff's organization. I said, well, the funny thing is that Burke County has already offered to hire me, and he almost like, what? Because it's still difficult, and at that time in 2014, still difficult for women to get into law enforcement, even though women officers are really needed. Because when we're out on the scene, or even not even on the scene, women have to be like, if you're doing a car stop and you have women in that car, do you really want men to shake women down and to pat them down? No, you don't. So a lot of times they would call me and say, "Hey, we have a female over here. We need to have her searched." But just the stigma is there of women not being in law enforcement, that it's not designed for women, but it actually is designed for women, because you need to have women officers as much as men officers, because you have women going into custody, which they need to be searched and things like that. So I was called out a lot for stuff like that as well.
So back to before when you failed the first time for the real estate. What happened during the timeline between when you failed to when you went back again? What were you pursuing then?
Well, I think I was just kind of going by just whatever came around. Like I
Mhm.
had a lot of different jobs. I started off working in factories. I took a class at the community college for upholstery. I worked in upholstery for probably 2 years, and I just had all these different places I was going. It wasn't really a waste of time. It was just trying to figure out who I was and what I enjoyed. But even through that experience, I learned that even though upholstery paid good money, it was an inside job, and it was something that you had to do every day over and over again, and you're inside, and sitting down 12 hours a day was not something I enjoy doing. It may be okay for other people, but for me, I'm more of a type A personality. I like to go and move, and my stomach would literally hurt at the end of the day because I had sat for so long. But I didn't know that before I took the job. Like, yeah, I thought I would enjoy sewing or upholstery work, but I just didn't. I like to be out and about, and that's why I think real estate and law enforcement is good for me, because it gets me out of one place and I meet different people. It's kind of like especially with law enforcement, you're just, You get that call and you go. You don't know if it's going to be your next call is going to be, a breaking and entering, or if it's going to be a domestic. But it's like the seat, but you're flying by the seat of your pants, and that's what I learned, that I enjoyed doing things outside and not just being at the same place every day, seeing the same people and doing the same thing.
You mentioned earlier that you did a lot of stuff with childcare and working with kids. Do you think that working with kids and having to use a lot of different communication skills with littler kids, do you think any of that helped with your later jobs with like working in police work or even real estate?
Uh, my experience with kids was, I think being a school bus driver, learning that kids are kind of, um, um, of course, they're not adults. You kind of have to tell them, you have to guide them. I think it did help some with that, but I think when you get to talk with them one on one and learning about them, especially with my SVU cases when children have been abused, you learn a lot more when you're one on one instead of teaching a whole class at one time. When you're one on one with them, you learn a lot more about how I guess, the psyche of a child works sometimes. Um, but I mean, overall, I think I learned some with teaching and driving, but it's more as a group. And I help at our church and do group stuff, and also have worked with Girl Scouts. Um, but I think one on one is a little bit different game when you're talking about, with law enforcement and working with kids. It's just a little bit different.
So I know you personally, and I know you're very active in the community and in the church. And I want to know how you got to becoming a teacher in the churches in Sunday school and youth. Did that come from the teaching experience, or was that just a whim? This happened and I kept going with it.
Um, so I got saved when I was real young, and my religion is very important to me. So even when I got older, I knew that people had poured their interest in me when I was young, which made me want to be able to pour my interest into other kids as I grew older. So faith was always a very important part of my life. Um, so being a youth leader and just working with kids has always it's always come kind of natural. I like probably older age groups, and I always think God gives us a special age group of people. Some folks like nurseries, like babies. Some people like elementary, middle, high, even young adults, even senior citizens. Everybody has a gift, in my opinion, of what group they really enjoy working with. And my favorite group is the high school students.
Do you think that your real estate experience helped you with making connections for the youth? Because I know we went on a lot of things and you were able to coordinate those. Did those skills come from that, or did you just naturally have those communication skills?
I'd say I probably naturally this, and like I say, with God giving us special age groups to work with, I think He gives us special talents and abilities, and I think that just being with people and relating to people, and I think those skills are kind of natural in some ways.
Yeah, that's something that I predicted was going to be a trait that maybe I didn't know if you were even aware of it yourself. Is like working with people seems to be like something that you would value, right?
Absolutely.
Uh, I'm curious, at what point in your life did you realize that?
Wow, actually, it's kind of funny you asked that, because when I was a kid, I was very quiet. I was very shy. And my teachers in class were like, "She's just so shy." I remember going to parent teacher conferences, and I remember them telling my mother, "She's so quiet. She's so shy." But I don't really know when it happened. Probably, your first job. My first job was Hardee's.
Yeah.
Welcome to Hardee's. May I take your order, please? And you just get that, they're teaching you. You need to smile. You need to be nice. And I think just as growing up, I just took a liking to people. And then as I grow further in my faith, we learn that we're supposed to put other people's needs before our own. So it's I don't know, it's just something that comes, I think, kind of natural with my faith. That I was able to kind of come out of my shell from a younger person and be able to really reach out, laugh with people, joke with people, not be so serious,
Yeah.
things like that.
So from like real estate to law enforcement, Girl Scouts, church, like that's a common thread across.
Absolutely, yes. And it's funny because law enforcement's a lot different. Real estate's like, I drive around my car, I'm listening to Christian music, I'm interacting with people, very nice, very sweet. And then you also, all of a sudden, you get in law enforcement, you're different. You have to take command. You have to be that presence that's there. Even when you show up on the first call, when you show up on a call at a domestic, you have to take presence and be like, okay, number one as far as like use of force actually is presence. So you show up and you're like, okay, put that knife down, or put that weapon down, or let me see your hands. It's more of a commanding. So it's very different than being your Christian sweet nice lady, you know, because you're having to use authority. And I hadn't done that before, but it actually still came normal to me, or natural to me, to say, you know, uh, don't do that.
Yeah, it's funny as like a teacher.
Yeah.
There's other teachers in this very building that I've had the same conversation with, that we always would have been the people that none of our teachers ever thought we would be teachers, because we were always quiet and everything. It's like you still might want to work with people, but you don't realize you have it in you until
Do you do?
until you get into that new way of thinking or new way of working or something like that.
Yes.
So I know personally how important family can be to you because, I mean, you've known me my whole life and considered me family. I mean, though we're not genetically related, we're still, family. I want to know how, when your family dynamic changed before you were married, how that switched your careers. Did that affect anything, or were you able to still keep going?
When you mean the family dynamic change, you mean once the kids were grown and out of school, or
Yeah.
um, I don't know that it really changed me. It's a lot different around, like when you're at home. It's different
Yeah.
because you don't have kids to take care of. It's a lot different feeling when you're kind of like an empty nester. Um, but one thing with law enforcement is that, I see a lot of parents that or officers that are kind of, they're if something would happen to them, they would lose their family. I guess as a law enforcement officer, when you get older, you still have your family, but it's not like, hey, if I got hurt in the line of duty or injured in the line of duty,
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about taking care of my kids because they're gone. So that's one thing that I think is kind of good for as you get older, and you're in a risky, even like with military or law enforcement. Like once those kids get grown, you don't have that fear anymore. Like, oh gosh, if I got hurt, I wouldn't be able to take care of my kids.
I have a question about something you mentioned a few moments ago about how with your different jobs, you have to take this big shift in your personality. I was wondering how, like, you deal with that, if you find it easy to, like, be more assertive in your, police job.
Well, that's a good question. Taking that authority is, and even as you mentioned, it being a teacher, you still have an authority. You want to be humble. You want to be humble. You want to be good to people, but taking that authority is a tough job. And some people have problems with that. And even as I was in law enforcement 10 years full time, even seeing some of the new people come on, you could see that they were good folks, good officers, but it was very hard for them to assert authority, and sometimes even hard for them to even be social, which is a real big problem when you're in law enforcement. You have to be able to communicate. I mean, as soon as you get on the scene, hey, reason I'm here is blah blah blah, and my name is Diedre Parker, Officer Parker, or whatever, Deputy Parker. It's really difficult sometimes to do that. Like I say, I kind of took to it natural, but it is the first time you put hands on people, you're putting hands on people that are strangers, and but you have to be able to do that. It is kind of difficult to do that. Um, but we did a lot of that in training. but it's still with people that you knew. But it was really different when you got there and, someone's not obeying what you tell them to do, and they have a warrant for their arrest, and you're like, okay, you have a warrant for your arrest, turn around, put your hands behind your back, and they don't do it. Then it gets a little different.
Yeah, that work in a detention, like as a detention officer, is that like a normal path for people to become,
Not necessarily, not
that's not
necessarily.
uncommon.
It's not uncommon, but it's usually not the first step. Working in a detention center is um it's all inside. So you go in and at 5:30 in the morning, you come out at 5:30 in the afternoon, you haven't seen the sun, you haven't seen any but see, to me that's just it was it was really hard. But that's it can help you a lot though, because you start when you work in detention, you can, I guess, a lot of course, everybody who's been incarcerated is there because they've committed charged of committing a crime. So you learn kind of how some of those guys work and ladies work. They, they a lot of them are kind of similar, and they're actually good communicators. Most of the folks that are incarcerated are good communicators, and they'll be like, come up to you like, hey, Miss Parker, you look so good today. They had a lot of them had this kind of like, I want to try to manipulate you in a sense. I know it sounds weird, but they want to tell you that you look good. They'll say, hey, you did something 5 years ago. I remember you from 5 years ago. And I'm thinking, no, I just met you last year, or I just started doing it this year. There's no way you met me 5 years ago. But they have this way about them that they try to kind of manipulate you. So once you learn that, you learn, okay, these guys are smart. They're not dumb. These people in that have been incarcerated, they're smart. But you kind of learn how they try to manipulate you. So even as an officer, I never forgot that. I never forget how they, kind of like their mentality is to break you down, or to they just want to be paid attention to a lot of times. So of course you want to give them attention, but you don't want to cross that line. They'll ask you to do things for them, like, hey, could I have an extra piece of bread on my plate? I mean, just simple things. They want you to do that because they want to be able to I guess, to manipulate you. And some people do get manipulated, and some officers end up, having affairs, and I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But that's their intention. Their intention is to get one over on you, and get something over on you a lot of times. I'm not saying all of them are, but a lot of them that are kind of hardcore felony, maybe they're there for a felony awaiting trial. And that's the difference in the detention center at the county, is folks who have been charged with something and they're waiting for their hearing to be, or they're waiting to bail out of jail. That's the difference in that. And prison is like you're already convicted of a felony, and then you go to prison. So, but mine was just working in the jail system, so I saw a lot of different folks come through there.
So yeah.
So you mentioned in your career in law enforcement that you needed to have like different skills, like good communication skills, authority, all of that. Um, what are some things that you think people don't realize about working in the law enforcement field? Like, are there things that people assume or just don't know about working?
There are, like I say, I had several different jobs. My favorite job was probably patrol, because you meet so many different people and you're doing so many different things. Um, I think a lot of times people see law enforcement as hand, iron fist, in your face, mean and gruff, but it's actually not like that. It's especially, I mean, around here, especially, a lot of folks who are law enforcement officers are willing to lay down their life and make a very not really not a whole lot of money in that. I mean, there's money in law enforcement, but not, to me, not it's not a trade off for your life. But there's a lot of folks out here that go out of their way. I mean, we've come across folks that we had every right to shoot them because they didn't show their hands, or they had a weapon and could have shot somebody at any time. But around here, I've seen them say, you know, do not, don't fire until you actually would have to fire. But there's been a lot of moments where I thought this guy, he's not going to make it because he's not following commands. But I've seen officers pray with people. Um, and I see officers that have a lot of patience. That that's another thing it's really difficult is having patience with some of the folks that you work with. Some of them are repeat offenders, and you see them every day. And you got folks out here that are homeless, or folks um, that are um, seems like we're always dealing with the same people, drug addicts. And we get the most crazy calls. Just I've had calls of there's a rattlesnake in my house. I've had calls there's bees outside. Just you hear all these different things. And before I got in law enforcement, would have never thought that I would be dealing with someone who has some bees outside their house. And it's just all kinds of different things. Dead people. I've never seen dead people before. So seeing dead bodies was something new for me. Um, and a lot of that can stay. Like a lot of that can stay in your head. There's dead bodies that I saw that I can't erase. And I don't know what it is about seeing it, but it puts it in your head and you can't get rid of it.
I know in real estate you have to really make a name for yourself, especially when you had your own company. Has there been any instances where those two have overlapped? Like maybe you were selling a house and someone knew you from law enforcement, or like you were stopping a criminal and they were like, "Hey, you sold a house to my cousin," or something.
It's always funny when people come up and they say, "I know you from somewhere." I always wonder, like, okay, did I take you to jail, or did I sell you a house? Either way, you might have went to the big house. No, I don't know that they overlap a whole lot, but there are similarities in the job that you wouldn't think. One of those being that you are out and about. You're not always stuck in one place. You're driving in a car. Same with real estate. Same with law enforcement. You're driving in a car. Um, it's kind of sporadic. Somebody calls today and says, "Hey, we come look at my house today." So I go out and look at their house. So same as going to a call. It's kind of a similar, but I've learned that that's who I am, and what I enjoy doing is going out and not being in that same place every day, because I just can't do it. Just can't stay in one place all day long.
From working from your own company, did that help you make connections to get hired by someone else for real estate? Or did that have no like correlation?
So real estate's kind of weird, in my opinion. There's never going to be anybody that's not going to want to hire a new real estate agent unless they're just really, really, really bad. Because real estate, you work off commission. So I don't get a paycheck. I don't get paid for my gas. I don't get paid for anything unless I sell a house. So at the end of the year, I get what's called a 1099. I don't know if you guys know what that is, but at the end of the year, it's all the houses I sell. At the end of the year, my company gives me a 1099. But let's say I sell a house today, and that commission, let's say it's 100,000. Let's make it easy. $100,000 house. I make 3%. That's $3,000, right? So if I sell that house today, I get paid today from an attorney at $3,000. So when you work for a real estate agent or a real estate brokerage, you have to give a percentage of your commission to your broker, whoever you work for. So if you work for Central 21, Remax, um, any of the companies that are around, every company is different. So one company may charge you 50%, and I actually have paid 50% of my commission to my broker. So if I got the check for $3,000, I have to give my broker $1,500. So when you think about a company hiring a real estate agent, well, yeah, they're going to hire all the real estate agents they can, because they're going to make money off of what you sell. I actually am with a company now. I'll just go ahead and tell you. I'm with a company now, Hefner Real Estate, good friends of ours. She gives me 90% of my check. So it's awesome. I gave her 10%. It's not even worth it for me to open up a new company to do that with. But I did sell my company. Once we got into to the recession, I sold, and I went into law enforcement. I kept my real estate license, but now I still work for a broker. But because they give me 90%, it just makes it easy. Um, so yeah, brokers are going to hire as many agents as they can, because they make the commissions from their salespeople. So it's not like a regular job where you're getting hired, where you have to uh, you have to have my own insurance and things like that. So it's kind of a different scenario. Law enforcement, you just get paid every week like everybody else, so you get a W-2 at the end of the year.
You mentioned earlier that you did community work with like things like Girl Scouts and Cub Scouts. Is there anything about that that you could tell us about?
Oh, wow. So when my daughter was 5, she became a daisy, and she wanted to be in Girl Scouts, and, of course, you go to the meeting, and what do? They recruit you. So, I was recruited, when she was 5 to be a daisy Girl Scout leader, and we went up to juniors, about I think, maybe their later year of juniors, and then they kinda like, "Well, I don't wanna do this anymore," which is really aggravating because I wanted them to go on up, but they didn't. Then my nieces came along, and then they wanted to be Girl Scouts, so I joined with them. But Girl Scouting was a great man, it's a great organization. It teaches girls to do all kinds of different stuff. And there's actually programs, I don't know if you've ever heard that kind of girls kind of fall behind in science and things like that. I remember a program in particular called Bridging the Gap, and it was about that gap where males excel in science and mathematics and girls are kind of behind. So the Bridging the Gap program was to just get these girls interested in science. And so a lot of our badges and things that we worked on, that's what they were about, was bridging the gap. But we would take trips. Savannah is the headquarters of Girl Scouts. It's where Juliet Lowe, the founder, was born, and there's a lot of stuff to do there. But over the years, we took a lot of trips, did a lot of badges, and when my daughter fizzled out, I began again with my nieces, and I did another probably 5 or 6 years with them. So, but it's a great organization. Teaches girls how to change tires on a car, how to take oil, just things that you just don't normally learn how to do, especially girls who don't have dads around to teach them.
I know Girl Scouts is a thing that almost everybody knows about. What are some like misconceptions about it that people, or just things that people don't know about it? Because I feel like there's only like a surface level understanding.
Well, it's hard with Girl Scouts because today we have so many things that pull us. Just this phone, man. The phone is, I think, our number one competitor with things like that. You can learn a lot in Girl Scouts, but there's just there's a lack of interest because I feel like of course there's sports, but I think sports is good. But sports and these phones and television, entertainment, there's just so many things that are pulling kids different directions. Even for church, it's the same way. Wednesday night church service, a lot of folks just don't do it because there's just there's not enough interest in it, because there's too many things pulling our attention different directions. So I think that's why.
With church and like youth group, how have you tried to like combat that and work towards drawing people in and trying to get them interested?
Yeah, that's hard. I think that's even hard for Sunday morning service. I think that's hard for churches, period, is to get people in the doors. And it sounds bad, but you see folks have different different avenues of trying to get people in the door. Like, when we had when we had when I had shoot youth group, we would be like, okay, let's go skating. Let's do something fun. Over the years, I've done different things just to try to get people to come. And it's almost bad because you're saying, hey, we got to do this to get people to come, which we shouldn't have to. But sometimes you have to compete. You have to have some type of plan. Um, have a big fall festival, just something to draw people in. And I think the hard part too is mentoring and continue to keep these people in and communicating with them and keeping them in your group, so that they don't get sucked out into other things. It's just tough though. It's tough.
How do you relate that outreach to your real estate with trying to get clients?
Well, I'm just gonna be honest, I don't do a lot with real estate. I mean, I do a lot with real estate, but I don't try to get a lot of business, especially with my health. There were years where I did. I did postcards, I knocked on doors. I was If they had for sale for owner by sorry, for sale by owner sign in the yard, I was right there at them like, "Hey, let me talk about selling your house," and things like that. But I don't do that as much anymore. I have a good bit of clientele. And I don't know if you guys know anything about like hairdressers and people who kind of have clientele. When you first start, you gotta like really, really work real hard. But once you get your clientele and they're satisfied with you, you kind of get repeat customers back, and they'll tell their folks, they'll tell their friends. So I don't really work as hard as that. I don't really work hard at that as I used to, um, just because I don't have to anymore. Getting kind of up in the retirement age, I don't have to do that quite as much.
More to like a fun question. What's one like kind of house that you just won't sell? Like there's something that you just don't want near it.
I don't know if there is. I mean, I've sold everything from single wides to $500,000 houses. Uh, my thing is usually not houses; it's usually people. If people are good and nice and
Yeah.
easy to talk to, but if I have someone that comes to me and they're just like arrogant and just over the top arrogant and rude, I won't work with them. I'll just be like, let me give you a card to somebody else. I don't have to do that. So
From what I've seen, it seems like you have a real strong emphasis on partnership rather than like clients. So it seems like even with your law enforcement that you're really wanting to work with everyone and not like, for them or them working for you.
yeah, kind of. I like I say, I enjoy working with people, and when I take clients out to show them a house, I really enjoy selling people houses. And I don't care if it's their first house or if they're higher up. But actually, the first time home buyers are the most greatest people to work with because they're just so excited. They're going to the house and they can see what it could be, and they're just excited. And a lot of times you don't have that when people have bought 2 or 3 houses. They walk in and they're like, oh, there's a speck in the wall. We don't like this neighborhood, and then they're just kind of like drab. I want to work with people who are excited about buying, and even though hey, it doesn't pay as much, it doesn't. I mean, if you're based on a percentage. You're talking about $200,000 house versus a $600,000 house. There's a lot of difference in commission pay, but I would rather work with a $200,000 buyer who's like their first house and they're excited. I would rather work with them than I would someone who's just drab and I don't know. And that sounds crazy, but it's just the way I'm built, I guess. Not that I wouldn't sell to an older couple or somebody who's looking, but it's nice to work with that person who's just not as picky, I guess. And then we go in, you're like looking around to see what all's wrong with the house, and there's different types of agency. There's buyer's agency and listing like seller's agency. But buyer's agency, when you work with a buyer, I always treat those folks like if I was buying that house, hey, I see some cracks in the foundation, or I see something not quite right about it.
Yeah.
And that's what I always try to do. And even if they really like the house, but I feel like there's something off, I'm like, hey, I know you really like this house, but there's some foundational issues or whatever. Try to always point that out, pretend like it's myself, because that's what an agent is. An agent is someone who is actually, you're putting yourself in their shoes, and I'm treating this person like they're my mother or my father or even myself buying a property that I would want to know the answers to.
You mentioned a little bit ago that you had like at least a few clients that are a little hard to work with. Do you have any like advice of how to get around those barriers of them being like dull or a little rude?
Hmm. Uh, I just know over 55, and I've done real estate for 25 years. There's some folks that are just seem like they kind of never want to be happy, and you could do cartwheels and do all kinds of stuff, but they're never going to be happy, and a lot of times that can come back to bite you. So that's kind of where I am. If I talk with folks and they just seem like they're just a little bit too um, particular, or I don't want to say rude, but if I just get a really bad vibe of them, probably just not going to work with them. Because sometimes that can, like I said, that can come back later as in the form of a lawsuit or just something that I don't want to even take the chance of. Um, I don't do that very often. It's very, very seldom I do that with, but it has happened. And also, I've learned from other people, contractors and different folks that work with people. Um, Lawsuits are just crazy today, and I just if I get a bad vibe, I just don't wanna go down that road. I haven't had any lawsuits, by the way, no lawsuits, but just saying.
A minute ago, you mentioned like you would want to sell like if they were your mom and dad. Specifically with like your childhood and growing up, do you think that has led to your careers now? Or if there's any correlation, or if you would have just never seen this happening?
No, I don't think it has anything to do with my family. I just try to treat them as if they were family. Um, my parents were both older, and my father died when I was very young. I'm gonna say I was like I think I was 19 when he passed away, and my mother passed away. I think I was maybe about 25, but they didn't really, and that was another problem, and I'm sure it's a problem with a lot of kids. You know, you don't really know what to do when you're in high school, especially if your parents have never been to college. Your parents really don't have an education. I had great parents, but they don't know how to lead you down a path because they've never been there themselves. And back when I graduated, back in the old days, say I graduated '89. Um, it was difficult because I when we grow up kind of poor, and you want to as soon as you turn 18, you want to go to work. I mean, because you don't have anything, you absolutely have nothing. So that's kind of where I was when I turned 16. I went to work at Hardee's, and I just wanted to get started working. I bought my first pair of name brand shoes when I was 16. So I had never had a pair of Reeboks or Nikes or anything like that. So when I got my first job, that's all I wanted was, hey, I want to get me a pair of shoes. I've never had any brand new bike. So my next paycheck or two, I bought me a new bike. It's but I always wanted to have things, but I didn't really know about education and even how to get started. So that's I think that's difficult even today for younger kids that are graduating or getting ready to graduate. They don't have the resources in their life. Their parents may not have been there, may not know how to tell them to go down that road. So that's another obstacle I think for young people.
What advice would you give to those parents to help the kids who like haven't didn't go to a typical career? Maybe they stayed at like the same job they've always been instead of pursuing something more.
Yeah, and that's the way it was in my generation. Like parents worked in hosiery mills, they worked in furniture factories, and they did the same job 30, 40 years. Um, and I don't even know if some of the parents are even aware of what they need to do. I think that's the point. I think the it needs to start in the schools. Of course, I know that they've gotten better with shadowing programs and things like that. But when I was in school, we didn't have that. Like I never had a class that I could go to learn like shadowing. So or any type of kind of like, okay, this is what you need to do. Like you need to follow this path. It's like I was just kind of like went through the cracks of that. But even if I would have gotten that information, I don't know what I would have done with it. And my dad, he like had an eighth grade education.
Yeah.
He was very smart. He could weld, he could build, he could do all kinds of things with his hands, but he just never had the education. He was also in the army, but he never had the book part of it and the college part of it. It was very, very smart. And my mom, kind of the same way. I think she got maybe till 11th grade and left school. So I don't know that school was even something they thought about even for us. I think they kind of wanted to put us on a career path because they didn't know anything different. That's what they did. They went on a career path, so you put your kids on a career path. I think it's I think it's sad in a lot of ways though because I think a lot of kids are in that situation where they don't know what to do and they don't know where to go, and then I don't have any money, unless someone talks to them about grants and how they can get into college and be able to survive financially without a car. You know what I'm saying? Like, how do you do that? How do you how do you do it if your parents don't really have much? And there's a lot of kids with single parents too. How can they go down that road when they're thinking all I gotta do is make some money?
How did you take your parents' experience and then yours and use it to parent your children
Hmm.
when it comes to like encouraging them to what they want to do?
Yeah, I always encourage my kids to go to school. When both of them graduated high school, but my daughter, she just felt like college wasn't for her, and she tried. She tried twice. Um, And my son never took a liking to it either. So it's even though you want it for your kids and you offer it, sometimes it's still not what they want to do.
Yeah.
And what's really, like I said about mine, was that I was an AB honor roll student and still didn't really know what to do when I was in high school because I didn't know what road to take. So,
It's been mentioned a couple times that for at least a little while you had your own real estate company.
yes.
What like hardships came with that?
At that time, real estate, you think, okay, with real estate, you think there's only kind of one path and it's just buying and selling houses. But actually, there's a lot of career paths in real estate. You can go into commercial real estate or residential real estate. You can focus on just land sales, or you can, at one time, right before I lost or I'd say lost my company, I sold it. But before the recession, I was actually, I had a niche in foreclosure properties. That was my niche, which was for like bank foreclosures. And so I had my company from about 2004, 2010, so about 6 years. Um, but there's a lot of different pathways in real estate. You could also go into real estate appraisals, or you can go into like I also do some things on the side. Insurance companies also hire real estate agents to go out and take a photo of the house to see if it's changed any. Has it? We especially when Helene came. When Helene came, I had about 400. I'd say 400 to 500 houses I had to go out and take photos of, and for each house she got paid a little bit. But I just set me up a route, and I go like 4 county area, spend all day taking photos of houses just to show either the mortgage company or the insurance company that the house was still standing and still in good condition. So there's a lot of things off of that. What was that main question you had about that?
I was asking what like hardships came with
Hardships.
having.
Okay. Yeah. So with that, with the real estate company itself, I had about 7 agents that work with me. Um, I don't really know that there was any hardships except when sales got down to where nobody could really make it anymore. Really didn't have many hardships with that. I'm trying to think if anything in particular. It actually came pretty smoother than I thought it would be. I had to file for my business license, and the fire inspector had to come out and check everything, make sure the office was safe. Um, just managing other realtors, kind of training new realtors that came in, but really not really a lot of hardships in that. It was pretty easy, pretty good. Yeah.
On the flip side of that question, what are some strong successes you had, or the most rewarding moments in either of your careers?
That's hard to. Goodness gracious. I think owning my own company was good, but I'm such an A personality. Like once you get there and you've done it, it's like, okay, what's next? Um, mm, I think I loved real estate so much, and I still love real estate. But at one point, and a lot of points in my life in real estate, I would go out and show people houses and sell houses, and I would think, I can't believe I actually get paid to do this. So I enjoy it so much. I feel like I'm not even working. That's how much I love that job, and I still enjoy it. Um, so I don't really know that there's actually a real big, um, something in that. But with law enforcement, it's a little bit different. I think when you have a victim that needs something, so if it's someone who hey, my laptop got stolen, and then you are able to track down that laptop and bring it back to them, that's a rewarding moment. I had a guy whose house got broken into. Um, I got the shards of glass. We took fingerprints and actually got hits on those fingerprints, and I was able to find out who did it and have him charged with felony B&E. And Like he was a retired school teacher. But just things like that, that's rewarding as well. Knowing that you took the time to do it, because some officers won't even do fingerprints. Like they just like, I'm not doing that. But I enjoyed trying to find out who did what and go the extra mile. And when you go the extra mile, a lot of times that's how you get the case solved. But being able to say, hey, you're a victim. This was your offender. We have him charged. You get restitution or whatever. That's rewarding.
I just want to clarify, the teacher was the victim, correct?
Yes.
Because I know we're talking about like switching career paths. That's a big difference.
Yes.
Going from teaching kids to breaking them out.
Yes. He was a victim. Yes.
I'm glad you asked that clarified question because I really thought the teacher retired and then was broken into this person's house.
Yes, the teacher was the victim.
On a bigger scale, what do you think, like, you still think today in, like, your life, what you're most proud of, like, your most big success has been?
My faith.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that'll always be. Yeah.
How do you continue to contribute that in your, like, careers, like, through law enforcement and your real estate?
Oh, I think it's just living. I think everyone is a living testimony. If you have a faith, I think you're a living testimony. The way you talk to people, the way you help people, that is it. You're a living testimony every day, no matter if you're, going to the grocery store or if you're working in real estate or law enforcement. It doesn't really matter. No matter what you're doing, the way you treat people and the way they see Christ through you is a living testimony.
I think our last question is, what is the best advice you have for young people trying to figure out what they want to do in their life?
Don't be afraid. Just keep going down different career paths. You don't have to go down that one way. And I've been on. They used to laugh at me because at the end of the year I had so many tax forms because I've worked like 15 different places. But hey, it helped me to realize where I needed to be and where I needed to go and what I enjoy doing. So, don't be afraid to switch up. If you are not happy and you're not happy, why stay there? I see that every day, that even with my family, with my siblings, with my nieces or nephews, I'm just like, if you're not happy there, don't stay there. You don't have to stay somewhere 20 years just because of 401k or whatever it is. Just, you don't have to stay somewhere just because that's where somebody is pressuring you or telling you that you need to do it. Just give it some thought, write down your plans, write down pros and cons, brainstorm it, but don't feel like you have to stay somewhere just because somebody tells you to.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you, Diedre, for joining us today. Today's episode was recorded on March 12th. This episode was produced by Mr. Cooper. It was hosted by me, Lily Edwards, and Brianna, Elizabeth, and Cheyenne.
Thank you for having me.